From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 Show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 Show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
Yes, welcome into the 301 show, first episode. Got a couple of things to go over today. Got Wild first preseason game recap, happened this past Saturday. Also got some predictions for both the Wild and the Timberwolves on this upcoming year. Then we've got the Vikings recap, their game against Houston. And then lastly, we look at the Twins' absolute implosion over the last couple days and their tough last week of the year trying to make it into the final wild card spot and make the playoffs. So let's dive right in. So the Wild playing up in Winnipeg on Saturday. They do get the win 5-2. I understand it's the preseason, so the ending result, final score doesn't really matter, but you still like to see your favorite teams win these games, have that winning mentality going into a season, although I don't know how well the season is going to go for the Wild, as this is the last year of the massive parts of the Parisian Suter buyouts. It goes down to around $1 million next year, which the way the cap has been going up the last few years should be fine, should be a lot better than the 14, $15 million that they're paying in the buyouts now. But looking deeper into this Wild versus Jets game, the Wild were outshot 40-28 in this game. Jesper Wallstedt stopped 38 of 40 shots. This kid has given me more confidence in the future of Wild goaltending since maybe Josh Harding. I mean, he had the year of Dubnyk when he got traded here, when he went on that 38-40 game run where he was the best goalie in the league for half a season. And like this kid is so good. I would be surprised if this kid does not win a Vezina trophy at some point in his career. He will win a Vezina trophy at some point. But he stopped 38 of 40 shots. The Wild were on the penalty kill 5 times, which that is a story in and of itself. They got to clean that up. But there's 10 minutes of a 60-minute game where you're down a man. He stopped every shot. The Wild were 5 for 5 on the penalty kill. He stopped every shot on the penalty while the Jets were on the power play. This kid, I can't say enough good things about this kid's future in the NHL and where the Wild's young prospects are right now. I mean, they're getting to the point where their core, they're the oldest guy in their core. You can argue Brodin and Spurgeon might be the oldest guy, but the oldest guy of their young core is Kirill, and he is 26, I think, 26, 27 years old. Like, then they have, Rossi and Boldy and Faber and all of these young up-and-coming kids that it might not be this year. I'm going to get out in front of that. I don't think the Wild are going to be that good this year. I could see them maybe contending for a wild card, but I don't see how they're going to be super, super good this year. But they have the building blocks. They were 5 for 5 on the penalty kill in this game. And again, very small sample size. You're not playing all of your best players. They're not playing all of their best players. You're 5 for 5 on the penalty kill, 2 for 3 on the power play. You were also 51.9% from the faceoff dot. That is where the Wild have struggled the last few years since Mikko Koivu left, is the faceoff dot. They have been in the 40s. They've been winning less than half of their faceoff. So if they can find centers that win more faceoffs than they lose, not every single one is going to do that. That's asking a lot of your center core. But if they overall can win more faceoffs than they lose as a center unit, and you end up with the puck right off the rip from the beginning, you're gonna end up winning more games because you have more chances to take the puck and either clear it from your defensive zone or set up time in the offensive zone. Another two more numbers that looked really good from the first game was the Jets had 29 giveaways to the Wild's 20 giveaways. The Wild also had 9 takeaways to the Jets' 8 takeaways. So they won the turnover battle. That is what you look at the shots and the score, you're like, how did this happen? That is how that happened. The Jets could not hold the puck when it mattered, and the Wild could. So that is, again, I know it is a small sample size. It is a preseason game. But I want to say the first preseason game, they looked really good, especially Jesper Wallstedt. Now, I want to get into some predictions here. I want to predict the Central Division standings and then what I'm going to call the Wild Season Awards. So I'll get into that in just a second here, but we'll go over the standings first because that is just the most straightforward. So I think winning the division, I'll start at the top and go down. Winning the division, I have the Colorado Avalanche. I think as long as they have, their McKinnons and McCarr and Rantanen and all of those superstars, I think they are going to be they are the team to beat in the Central Division. Number 2, and I think this is the team that could probably give Colorado, if Colorado doesn't win the Central, this is the team my guess would be that they would win, is the Nashville Predators. They were a good team last year, and then they went out and added Stamkos and I forget who the other, I can't remember who the other, his old teammate. Just the guys they added to that Nashville team only improves their team. They brought in vets, they brought in the veteran leadership, and mixed with the young guys. Now, yes, they did trade away Yaroslav Askarov, but they have UC Saros in net. They have their goaltender, and they locked them up for 8 years. They are a very good team. Number 3, I have the Dallas Stars. And they're kind of the same as Colorado in my mind, where as long as they have the, Jason Robertsons and Otter and net, Lakeville kid, they're going to be in there for contention. Number 4, I have the Winnipeg Jets. I could see them, again, contending for a wild card spot, and I'd probably, if I did the entire Western Conference, I probably would have them as one of the 2 wild card teams. But I think the Winnipeg Jets get 4th in the Central Division. Number 5, I have the St. Louis Blues. Now, the St. Louis Blues, I just kind of didn't know where to put them because I didn't think they're that bad, but I also don't think they made enough of improvements to be contending with the Nashville and Dallas and Colorado of the division. So I just put them 5th. Number 6 in the division, I have the Utah Hockey Club. I think I could maybe see them 7th, but I think they're going to be riding a high from moving and having that go their way. But I don't think their roster is also good enough to be much higher. And I do think there might be a gap between Winnipeg and St. Louis, and then another gap between St. Louis and Utah. So number 7 in the division, this is where I have the Wild. Again, I don't think we're going to be really that good this year, unfortunately. Which I should say, unfortunately, if you are wanting to watch the Wild in playoff hockey this year. But the worse they are, the better chance they have at a better draft pick to build that prospect pool that is already very good. And then last in the division, I've got the Chicago Blackhawks. Again, they don't have enough help around Connor Bedard right now to really make any type of push in my mind. Like they have the superstar, they don't have the depth. So those are my Central Division standings. I'll go through them again. Colorado 1, Nashville 2, Dallas 3, Winnipeg 4, contending for a wild card spot. St. Louis 5, Utah 6, Minnesota 7, and Chicago 8. So now let's go on to the other predictions I have, and these are what I'm calling the Wild Season Awards. So I just went through all of the NHL awards and looked at all the NHL season awards, and I basically said if the only players that qualified for these awards were Wild players, which one would I give it to? So the first award I have is the Conn Smythe Award, which is the playoff MVP. Now, I've predicted that they're not going to make the playoffs, so my prediction officially here is none. But if they somehow do, I'm going to go a little bit off the board and say Marc-Andre Fleury wins the Conn Smythe as the best playoff player if they make the playoffs. Again, my official prediction is nobody wins this because they missed the playoffs, but if they somehow do, I think Fleury's the best player in the playoffs. The Hart Memorial Trophy, which is the regular season MVP award. Easy choice here. I've got Kirill Kaprizov. Not going to overthink that one too much. But yeah, it's Kirill. Until proven otherwise, my prediction will always be Kirill being the best player on the Wild because he is. Calder Memorial Trophy for Rookie of the Year. I'm giving it to Jesper Wallstedt. I think he's going to come up here and play a decent amount of games. I think another prediction here, I think they get rid of Gustafsson and trade him away at this point because I think Wallstedt is too good to be playing down in Iowa for one more year, but you've got 3 goalies on your team. So I would rather have Wallstedt in this kind of transition year learning from Marc-Andre Fleury, and you can go out and get something for Philip Gustafsson. So now the Vezina Trophy, again, I think because Gustafsson's getting traded, it's not going to be him. And I think during the regular season, at least, Jesper Wallstedt gets more games than Marc-Andre Fleury does. So I think Jesper Wallstedt will win the Wild's Vezina Trophy. The James Norris Trophy for the top defenseman, very easy choice for me here. Even if Spurgeon comes back fully healthy, I know Brodin is arguably the most underrated player on this team, maybe the most underrated player in the NHL, definitely one of them. But I'm giving it to Brock Faber. Brock Faber will be, in my mind, will be the best defenseman for the next, I guess, 8 years they locked him up for. Yeah, he's the best young defenseman on this team. I think he's just going to end up being the best defenseman here for a very long time. So the Art Ross Trophy for the highest point scorer is, again, best player on the team. It will be Kirill Kaprizov. He's been the highest point getter basically since he came to the NHL from Russia for the Wild. So he will, barring any, knock on wood here, barring any injury, he will be the best or highest point getter again. And then the Frank J. Selke Trophy for the best defensive forward. This one, again, in my mind, there's only one obvious choice here, and that is Joel Eriksson Ek. I think he's, again, one of the most underrated defensive forwards in the entire NHL. Like, he basically took the place of Koivu. Koivu was one of the most underappreciated defensive forwards in the entire league, and I think Joel Eriksson Ek has basically taken that mantle from him as the Wild's best defensive forward. Lady Byng Trophy for the best sportsmanship on the ice. I don't 100% know, but I was looking at some of the stats last year, and I just went with the guy that played the most games while having the least amount of penalties, and that was Jonas Brodin. So I'm just going to give it to Brodin again this year. That's a little bit subjective, but I think penalty minutes per game is a good metric to show for that one. And then the Rocket Richard Trophy for the top goal scorer. Again, you can probably guess who I'm going with here. It was the top point getter. My prediction for the top point getter, again, unless barring some injury, this will be Kirill Kaprizov. The we got last two awards here, and then we'll move on to one of the other teams. So my prediction for it's the William M. Jennings Trophy for the fewest goals against. You do have to play a minimum of 25 games as a goalie for this. So this is where I might get burned on this prediction. He might not play enough games, but I'm going to predict that it will be Jesper Wallstedt getting this award. I just think he will be at some point the starter for the Wild, and I think he will play enough games and then will be the best goalie on the Wild, statistically as well as the eye test too. And the last one, the Bill Masterton Award, the perseverance to the game of hockey. Again, I think there's only one player that can do this that really qualifies for this as of right now. Again, God forbid something tragic happen in these players' lives outside of the sport of hockey. But right now, in my mind, there's only one player that this could be, and that is Jared Spurgeon coming back and playing 60, 70 games this year after being out basically the entire year. I don't think he played a regular season game. I think he got hurt in the preseason and then didn't play in the regular season at all. So Jared Spurgeon will be my prediction for the perseverance to the game of hockey Bill Masterton Award. All right, now let's move on to the Wolves' Den. I want to get out ahead of this early. I know the least about basketball and the Timberwolves, so bear with me a little bit here as I just have some predictions for the Timberwolves right now as they have not played a preseason game yet, so have not seen them in action yet this year, but we will certainly report on that when the time comes. So we're going to do the same type of thing with the as the Wild. We're going to go over the regular season standings predictions as well as the team awards. And for the regular season standings, the divisions don't really matter in basketball as much as they do hockey. So I went with the Western Conference standings, but I didn't want to. Once you get down in the weeds, it doesn't really matter. So I just predicted the 4 play-in teams and then the top 6 automatic bids. So I will just go over the top 10 in the Western Conference regular season standings. So we'll start at the bottom for this one. Number 10, I have the Memphis Grizzlies just squeaking into a playoff spot. I think of their success in my prediction here is very much based on if Ja Morant can stay healthy and can stay out of legal trouble and stay on the court. I think they could potentially be higher than this if they can, again, he can stay playing, but I'm going to put him at 10 for now. Number 9, I have the Sacramento Kings. I think adding DeMar DeRozan is very good for them. So I think they will stay around kind of where they were last year. Number 8, dropping down from number 6, I have the Phoenix Suns. I think KD might slow down a little bit, although he didn't look like he was at the Olympics. But that team was just really weird last year. They looked like they were way better on paper than they actually performed. Um, that's why they got the 6th seed in the playoffs. I thought they were going to be 4 or 5 or maybe even 3, but last year, but they did not do that well, and so I have them taking a little bit of a step back this year. Now at number 7, taking a decent sized step back to is I have the LA Clippers. Again, I don't think I this isn't really this is more that they didn't really do enough than um them getting worse. So I've got them hosting the uh play-in tournament. Not hosting all of the games, but being the top seed of the play-in tournament. Bottom seed that will make it out of the play, not have to play in the play-in tournament. I think just because of the high they ended their season on last year, and this is 100% my most out there pick. I have the Houston Rockets at number 6. Again, completely just my one very out there prediction. I'm expecting, if everything is right except for one, I'm expecting this one to be wrong. Number 5, again, I think this relies on their superstar staying healthy and playing and like wanting to play all 82 games. I know NBA players don't play all 82 games, but we'll say playing the majority of games. Number 5, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. I think if Zion can stay healthy, he will basically drag them to the 5 seed. Number 4, I think they take a step back from where they were last year, and not necessarily playoff step back, but I think they have seen the last few years how grueling the playoffs are and say, hey, we don't care as much about regular season success. We just want to have success in the playoffs. And I've got the Denver Nuggets at 4. I think they looked tired against the Timberwolves in the first 3 games, and then in game 7 too. I just don't see a way that they don't say, hey, we've played a lot of basketball over the last 3 years. They won it back-to-back years, and then they made it to the second round. So there's, basically an extra 5 months over the last couple years of playing basketball. I just think they take a step back and say, we don't need to go as hard as we can every single night. So my prediction is them at 4. And at 3, I've got the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, I think it's more that they just take a step back because they didn't do enough in the offseason. And I think they might look at the regular season as like the Nuggets do and just say, hey, we don't need to go full throttle for 82 games. We can take it easy for 10 to 15 and we're still good enough to make the playoffs. And then we go full throttle for as long as they go in the playoffs. Number 2, I've got the Dallas Mavericks at number 2. I think they're riding high from their finals appearance. I think they're going to want to, get back there and finish the job they couldn't do from last year. So I've got them at number 2. And then at number 1, complete homer pick. I have the Timberwolves winning the Western Conference. I think they lost Slow-Mo, but I think the two rookies they brought in to help with the 3-point shooting, because that was their big like problem last year was their offense. They were, again, as we all know, the best defensive team in the NBA, but they had issues on offense. And so I think with the rookies, the two rookies that they brought in, I think are great support for them. And then I think you can tell Cat, like, you're good. You don't need all of the 3-point shooting pressure to be on you. And then I think with Jaden McDaniels coming back and Rudy Gobert, they still have the defense on lockdown. Now, I could see it too where Karl Anthony Towns. Now, this probably won't happen because I think they would have done it by now. But Karl Anthony Towns is making $60 million in either this year or next year. He's making like 50, I think, this year, and then 60 next year. So I could see them moving on from him at some point, which also would make sense because they got rid of, or they added, the Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham as in the draft. So they've got two young guys that can shoot 3-pointers. And then they also have, Naz Reid that could fill in that other big man role with Rudy Gobert. So those are my predictions. Again, I'll run through them quickly here. Minnesota 1, Dallas 2, OKC 3, Denver 4, New Orleans 5, Houston 6, the LA Clippers 7, Phoenix 8, Sacramento 9, and Memphis 10. All right, now let's move on to the team awards. And I did kind of the same thing where it was more just if the only players that were eligible for these awards were Timberwolves players, who would I give it to? So the MVP award, very easy. I've got Anthony Edwards. He will be the MVP of this team. He will be the best player on this team. Last year, you could have made the argument that Rudy Gobert maybe should have won the MVP of the Timberwolves, but this year it will be Anthony Edwards. For the sixth man of the year, since the Timberwolves only have one sixth man, I just went with bench player of the year, the best guy coming off the bench. But that doesn't matter because I still gave it to their sixth man. I'm giving it to Naz Reid. For rookie of the year, I'm giving it to Rob Dillingham. For defensive player of the year, here's where I went, again, more of a bold prediction, long shot prediction. I went Jaden McDaniels over Rudy Gobert because I think his perimeter defense is going to show up more in the stats than Rudy Gobert's, because Rudy Gobert will have more of the no never minds, where a player comes into the paint and then goes right back out because Rudy Gobert is standing there. And then most improved player, I'm going to give it to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think he's going to get a little bit of a bigger role, but a lot of these guys, I just don't know how much more they can improve in just 1 year. So I think he's going to just take a bigger role, and so his stats will look like they improved a lot. The Hustle Award, I'm giving that to Mike Conley. Clutch Player of the Year, I'll give to Anthony Edwards. He is the only player I gave 2 awards to, but I couldn't not give him the clutch player with the dunks and the block shots he had at end of games last year. So giving that one to Anthony Edwards. The Sportsmanship Award I am going to give to Rudy Gobert. And then the Teammate of the Year I'll give to Karl Anthony Towns, because I think he might take a lesser of a role this year if Naz Reid can step up a little bit. But those are my awards. Again, basketball is the sport I know the least, so I will probably be wrong on most of them. All right, now let's move on to the target field talkers. Got 6 games remaining for the Twins. They just got done with a series in Boston playing the Red Sox at Fenway. In game 1 of that series, they won it 4-2 in 12 innings. Castro was able to, excuse me, not Castro, Correa tied the game in the 7th inning. And Wallner, Larnick, and Castro all had 12th inning RBIs to go up 4-2. David Festa looked good in that game. He pitched 5 innings on 4 hits with 1 earned run. Also had 3 walks to 6 strikeouts. He looked really good. But then in games 2 and 3, game 2 was rained out and made on Saturday and made up on Sunday. So in game 2 of the series, Pablo did not look good. Now, if the Twins were to make the playoffs, I'd really hope that this bad start was able to get it out of Pablo's system a little bit. He only went 4 innings. He gave up 9 hits and 7 earned runs. And he walked 1 and only had 3 strikeouts. The Twins lost 8-1 that game. Now, the big story of that game was Tristan Casas for the Red Sox had 3 home runs and 7 RBIs. So, big game out of Tristan Casas. And then game 3 later on Sunday was a 9-3 loss where the Red Sox scored 6 runs in the 6th inning alone. Zebby Matthews pitched 4 2/3, gave up 2 hits and 1 earned run, had 2 walks to 6 strikeouts. So he didn't pitch too bad for a. It's probably what you'd ask for out of a rookie quarterback, or excuse me, a rookie pitcher. But the bullpen and some of the older starters are what is kind of letting this team down at this point. And they just, yeah, they can't seem to string together wins here against decent or good teams. And if they were a true World Series contender, I think they would be able to. Like, they won 2 against the Angels before they left on this road trip. They won 2 against the Angels. Angels aren't that good. Mike Trout's been hurt. He's not even. He's looks like just a shell of his former self. Now Shohei obviously isn't there anymore. He's on the Dodgers. He's killing it. But the Twins just they can't beat 500 or better teams consistently here in the last month or 2 of the season. And this just doesn't look good for the rest of the season for the Twins, because starting today on Tuesday, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, they have 3 against Miami, which Miami's not that great either. But then to end the season, they have 3 against Baltimore. Now, luckily, all 6 of those are at home, so they do have an advantage there. But Baltimore is a very, very good team. They are a true World Series contender, in my opinion, especially with how wide the AL is open here this year. And they're just, yeah, I don't have a good feeling about the rest of the Twins here. But the good news is, first of all, Ober is going in game 1, in game 1 against Miami here. And Ober has been fantastic this year. He's had 3 brutal starts, but outside of those 3 starts, he has been the Twins' best pitcher this season. Like, he has been the guy that I think we all thought Pablo was going to be all year. But Pablo has been really up and down. He had a stretch where he looked like he was the best pitcher on the team, and then a stretch where he looks like he's the worst starting pitcher on the team. So Pablo has just been inconsistent. Joe Ryan has been hurt, but he looked pretty good when he was playing. And then after that, it's like your fourth and fifth pitchers have been rookies, or you tried Louis Varland again, which did not work. He should have been a reliever all year. But then, like, Zebby Matthews and David Fesov looked fine for 4 and 5 starters, but especially as rookies, they've looked good. But the last thing of good news for the Twins is by the time Baltimore gets to Minnesota, they may not be able to catch the Yankees for that AL East spot, the division title in the AL East. And Detroit and Kansas City may not be able to catch them for the number one wild card. So the good news for the Twins is that they might not be able to move up or down. Baltimore might not be able to move up or down and might not play all of their starters uh, for every game in that series. So that is the good news for the Twins. Bad news is they still might. They might get them reps and start them at least at the beginning of the game and then take them out so they don't get hurt. They might treat it like more like a preseason game or a spring training game than the last couple games of the regular season. So we'll see what happens with the Twins here. Cleveland did clinch the division this weekend. And Detroit did jump Minnesota for the final wild card spot and third place in the Central. So the Twins do have their work cut out for them here. Now, I think Detroit also jumped Kansas City. So Kansas City is the team right ahead of the Twins at this point. But we'll see. We'll see how this ends up. My prediction is the Twins go exactly 500 and miss the playoffs by one game. Is my prediction for how this goes. They either go 2-1 against the Marlins or sweep the Marlins, and then go 1-2 against the O's or get swept by the O's. I don't see how they beat the O's in a series, and then I don't see how they lose to the Marlins in a 3-game series. So those are my thoughts on how the Twins have gone the last couple of weeks. All right, now last team to cover here are the Vikings. And I want to cover the Houston game and then some season stuff, full season stuff through 3 games so far, and then just some overall notes that I have for the Vikings so far. So first, the Houston game. The Vikings got outgained in the game, their offense. Houston had 296 total yards to the Vikings 274. But that didn't really matter because the Vikings absolutely obliterated the Texans. And it doesn't matter how many yards you get if you're not putting it in the end zone at the end of that drive. Like the Vikings can pick off CJ Stroud and return it to the 20-yard line, and then the offense only has to go 20 yards. So it shortens the field for the offense, and then the Houston offense, went 80 yards versus the Vikings 20. So generally you do want to gain more yards, but I'm not too worried about that because the score was so lopsided one way. And I also think another reason why the Texans outgained the Vikings is because the Texans also had 88 yards of penalties. So they had to, now that was on both offense and defense, but they were probably getting backed up on offense way more than the Vikings were because the Vikings only had 30 yards of total penalties, both offense and defense. And I think there was that stretch there on offense for the Texans where they got called for a false start or illegal formation, like 4 plays in a row or something like that. And so that will back you up and force you to cover more ground. And I just want to look at the quarterback comparison here, where CJ Stroud went 20 of 31. He had 215 passing yards, one passing touchdown, and two interceptions. Whereas Sam Darnold went 17 of 28, had 181 passing yards, but he had four touchdowns and zero interceptions. So those two interceptions were massive for the Vikings and shortening the offensive field and just how far the offense had to go. And then the defense was also able to get themselves off the field sooner on at least two drives, and they were able to, catch their breaths. And I think time of possession is massive, but not really in the way you think, because obviously it doesn't matter if you possess the ball for all 60 minutes if you don't end up scoring on anything. But if I think it does matter in how long the defense is out there and how much energy they have to use, because just over time you are expending more energy and just expending more energy, and then you'll be more tired and more likely to give up points later in the game. But the Vikings defense and B-Flow didn't do that. They were able to confuse the Texans offense enough to be able to get off the field quickly and be able to work around and fluster CJ Stroud. Like, CJ Stroud did not look like CJ Stroud. Sam Darnold looked more like CJ Stroud than what we expected out of CJ Stroud than CJ Stroud did. And Sam Darnold has had a fantastic first three games. I think you could make the argument that these were his best 3 games of his entire career playing. And I know the Giants aren't great, but then the Giants do still have a great front seven, with Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. And Dexter Lawrence did get in Sam Darnold's face a lot during that game. But the 49ers, then, they have, and they might have been exposed a little bit more this week, but they were a consensus like top 3 defense in the entire league. I think they're a consensus like NFC team to beat. Like, they were the team to beat in the NFC. Now, the Texans were not considered the team to beat because Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs exist. But I think you'd say that it's in the AFC that it's the Chiefs, the Texans, and then either the Ravens or the Bills as the top 3 teams in the AFC. So they have beaten 2 top 3 teams in the conference in their first 3 weeks, and they did so both pretty handily. I don't think that score of the Texans game, or not the Texans game, the 49ers game, really does it justice of how good the Vikings actually played in that game. I think that game was more of a blowout than just a 6-point game for the Vikings. And I'm sure people have seen Brock Purdy, the 49ers quarterback, went up to Brian Flores after their game and said, "Bro, your defensive scheme is crazy." Like, that is what the Vikings have kind of lacked since the 2017 season with Zimmer's first couple years of being the head coach. And it's nice to see the Vikings defense get back on track and good, and not a shell offense or defense anymore. But overall for the season, the offense has averaged 329.7 yards per game, which is 12th in the entire league. So near the top third of the league, almost in the top third, definitely top half. Points per game, they're averaging 28.3 points per game, which is third in the entire league. On third down, they are 26 of 35 for a 45.7% conversion rate on third down, which is also third in the entire league. And fourth down, they are 2 of 2 obviously for 100%, that will be tied for first percentage wise. But my point in bringing these stats up is I thought we were supposed to be brutal. The offense was supposed to be brutal without Kirk Cousins. I didn't think I was told I was told that the offense was supposed to take a step back and just be terrible this year. But they are a top 10 offense in the entire league, maybe even top 5. I know the 1 yards per game says they're 12th, but I think I can average that out and say that they are a top 5 team, top 5 offense in the league. And then on the defense, this is where Brian Flores is massive. They are uh yards given up per game. They are sitting at 310 yards point 310.7 yards per game. That is tied for 13th in the league. They have given up 10 points per game. 10. They've given up 30 total points this season. And most of those were against the 49ers in garbage time when the Vikings basically had that locked up. They are second in the league in defensive points per game. On third down on defense, opponents are 13 for 42 on third down for 31%. So opponents are only converting on 31% of fourth downs, which is 10th in the entire league. On fourth down, opponents have gone for it 10 times and are 4 of 10. So for a 40% conversion rate, and that is also 10th in the entire league. I look at these numbers right there that I just read, and I see a top 5 team in the NFL. Again, I know 3 games is still a decently small sample size, but 3 games is starting to show more of a pattern than just randomness. Now, the Vikings do play at Green Bay this week, and Green Bay has looked pretty good too. Matt LaFleur has figured out how to somehow unlock Malik Willis. So we will see how that goes. But I will say the biggest change, maybe not the biggest change, but I think the most underrated change this season has been the special teams, specifically the kicker. I think the Vikings have found their kicker. Will Reichert, Will the Thrill, Big Leg Bill, whatever you want to call him. I like Will the Thrill because, Will the Thrill coming. He is 5 for 5 on field goals, with his long being 58 yards, which was the one he just kicked against Houston this week. He is also 10 for 10 on extra point attempts, which 10 extra point attempts is second for most extra points made this season. I believe it is the Saints are the only team ahead of them for most extra points made. But knock on wood here, knock on wood a little bit, he has not missed a kick this season. Now, it's going to happen at some point. He's not, as a rookie, he is not going to be perfect this entire season. But we have found a kicker that is consistent and consistently good. Like Will Riker is the future of the Vikings kicking. He is gonna. My prediction is he will be here for a while. Now one of the biggest stats that I have seen under the KOC Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah regime is the Vikings are 20-0. They have 20 wins and 0 losses when they either win or tie the turnover battle. So as long as they don't lose the turnover battle in a game, they have not lost. Every single loss has been when they turn the ball over, either interception or a fumble, more than the other team. That seems like it is a very easy fix, especially the fumbles from last year. I don't know if you remember the first couple weeks last year. It seemed like Nobody wanted to hang onto the ball if you were wearing a purple jersey. But if you can just hang on to the ball, like people say, oh, the defense should just intercept it more, or the defense should go force fumbles and recover fumbles. It is way easier for the offense to just hang on to the ball than the defense to force a fumble. Like, just go, don't, don't give the ball up. And the worst you could, like, the Vikings didn't have any turnovers last week, or at least not any interceptions. And then Sam Darnold lost a fumble, but the Vikings were able to recover it. But they they won the turnover battle, and that is just a very easy telltale sign of how the game is going to go if they win the turnover battle. Last thing on the Vikings here. Sam Darnold had an MRI on his knee, and it looked, from what I was able to find, it revealed that he had no structural damage in his knee, and he said that he should be ready to go for Lambeau, which is great. This kid, like, after seeing Nick Mullins last year, I don't want Mullins starting a game. I would rather just have Mullins in at the end after we're up by 30 points like we were against Houston. Like, I don't want I don't want Nick Mullins near the field because he is just a turnover machine. They proved that last year because he was able to put up 400 yards last year in a game, but he also threw 4 interceptions during the same game. So Sam Darnold is the right option for this team at quarterback right now, and he's also only making $10 million. So this was the perfect scenario for the Vikings, is they found a quarterback that KOC can unlock something in while also not paying him top of the market money, or not that much money at all, and then they're able to go spend that money elsewhere. Like, if we had re-signed Kirk Cousins, then all the combination of Van Ginkel, Cashman, and Grenard and Jones, not all four of them would be here. We might have been able to sign one or two of them, but they wouldn't be able to be here. And the defense would not be able to be as good as it is, because I believe that they are as good as they are because we were able to sign those guys. So, yes, this segment turned into a praise of Sam Darnold segment, basically, and I am more than willing to do that going forward as long as he keeps playing well. So, thank you for joining us here for this first episode of the 301 show. Can hope you join us next week for episode 2. We'll have a similar format where we just go over all four all four men's sports teams here. If you do want me to talk about other sports, like maybe the Lynx when they start here, or I guess they're the Frost now, I'm more than willing to talk about those two teams, especially with the Lynx in the playoffs. Can talk about some college and high school stuff too if you guys want to hear that. But just let me know somehow that you want to hear it. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us this time, and we will see you next time.